see dope people. Welcome back to another episode of Dope People. I am your host, Brooklyn's favorite polymath, Hayden Green. And I am really excited for today's episode. I have a really great guest. For those of you who are new to the podcast, it's a really simple concept. I interview people that I consider to be dope, and I get them to tell me what interesting things that they're doing. And, you know, some people might not be familiar with the term dope. It's an old school term from like the 80s and the 90s, and it really just means somebody who is interesting, something that is interesting, and that's how I define dope. So I'm looking at all these people who are doing some really interesting things out there. Now, coming up to the stage, my guest today is one of my favorite people, and I have known this gentleman for quite some time, and we've been on the battlegrounds many times. And by battlegrounds, he and I are both spoken word artists, but we will get into all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one and only Chris Slaughter. Chris, how are you doing today, man?
Peace, bro. Everything is good. Can't complain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Great. Well, thank you for taking the time out here. I really appreciate you stepping in and being a guest here. We normally set the bar with this podcast, just really looking at what my guest thinks is dope, who they think is dope. So my question for you is, who's the dopest person that you have ever met, or somebody that you actually know?
It's funny. So I think my 12-year-old daughter is the dopest person I've ever met. Let me tell you why. And sure, I raised her, and sure, I've been there, and through everything. But this little girl is kind of like the me 2.0. She's super funny. She dances. She's an actress. She sings. She writes poetry. Um, she gets concepts that a lot of kids her age won't get. Like I can tell her a joke, an appropriate joke, of course, sometimes anyway. I can tell her a joke and she kind of gets it, right? And being that I work with kids, I work with a lot of kids who don't necessarily get things like that. And I don't know, I think my daughter's a really dope person because she even cares too. Like we'll pull up to like a drive-through or something like that, and she always wants to give like homeless people like more money than she should. And like the absolute only issue that I have with her is that she doesn't clean her room. Like other than that, like she's a truly dope person. I'm just like, I'm proud to be her dad, and it's and I'm not saying that to be like all cliche and corny and blah 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 blah. Like she really is like a good kid, and I think she's gonna be a great adult as well.
I totally can see exactly what you were talking about. Marley I've watched Marley from a distance, just really develop into an amazing young woman. And you're absolutely right. She takes on different, like when you see her, she takes on an affect that's a little bit different than your average kid. How old is Marley now?
Molly's 12, and let's not forget, you did a photo shoot with us when she was, I think she was maybe a couple of months old. Like she
Yeah.
wasn't even a year old yet when you did that photo shoot with us, and in my place and in the park, and super controversial Malcolm X pose by the window
Yep.
that
Yep.
I almost got in trouble for, but whatever. But yeah, like you got to see Molly like in the beginning. She barely had hair. We were panicking that her hair wasn't gonna grow, and it was so like I said, you saw Molly in the super beginning.
Yeah, and so absolutely. So Marley, I can attest, is definitely a dope person.
We gotta
So
make our kids friends, bro. Like
yeah, because
like
my younger kid is coming up on 12 years old. Yeah, so
we
we'll
got to
make
do
that
that.
happen.
Yeah, we got to do that.
We gotta make that happen. So listen, so here's where I get an opportunity to tell you what I think is dope about you. Now, I could have chosen a number of different things. Chris, you are one of the most amazing poets that I've been blessed to listen to. Um, anytime I had a poetry reading or an event, I was like, all right, who am I inviting to this? And always at the top of the list was your name, right? And but also you were, and we'll touch into this. We'll get back to this. You have a number of different ways that you affect the world, but one of the things that I have been really impressed with you is your parenting. And it's interesting that you bring up Marley because that's really where I have seen you shine. All the dope things that I see you do, I think the fact that you open space for Marley to be everything that she possibly can be in the most authentic way is one of the hardest things for a parent to do, right? So you and I are not rich, right? We didn't come from wealth. we,
Nope.
we're not like these trust fund babies, and so but we have moved and done things to elevate ourselves, right? You're an educator, I'm an educator, you're a poet, I'm a poet, and we've done these things to elevate ourselves out of the circumstances that we came from. Not to say that we were in depraved poverty, but like we're not rich, and there is a temptation to steer our children into a direction to be like, no, you've got to have certain earning capacities. You got to take it the next step from where I went, and I'm going to make it easier for you to do the things that are going to make you successful. But what I've seen in you is being able to do that with Marley without having to layer on these things of, well, you've got to now do all of these different things. And I've seen you be able to give her the space to be authentic. And it is amazing to watch, right?
Hey, I want to say this though, bro. Like I've been really struggling with the concept of struggle, right? And you know, I can't. My mother and father had me when they were 14. They were both 14 years old when they had me. So I've like struggled my entire life, roughly, right? And now, like you said, we're not rich, but having the means of just buying my daughter like the latest sneakers, like something as simple as that, is a lot. But and I'm wondering, I'm trying to find this balance of we don't want our kids to struggle, right? But we
Correct.
also don't want them to settle into a comfortability where when they become adults and then the struggle happens, they don't know what to do, right? So I'm struggling in a space where I'm trying to find some weird struggle balance with Marley, right? She gets everything, whatever she wants, she gets because she gets good grades in school. She doesn't give me no problems. But and some people might say, "Oh, that's trauma speaking," right? We have to figure a way to find a way to add a little bit of struggle to the ingredients of our kids.
Because it does build character. So it's ironic that you just said that because we were just having a conversation with me and a couple of my fraternity brothers about the fact that our lives are episodes of My Wife and Kids. Remember that Demi Wayans show
Of
or the
course.
Wayans show? So
Underrated show.
it's so underrated because it really encapsulated what it means to really become successful and then to be able to say, I don't want my kids to go through what I went through, but what I went through actually gave me the tools in order for me to be successful so that I'm now in a position to say that my kids don't have to be struggling, right? So it's a very very interesting juxtaposition, and I struggle with that every day, right? Like and so in the show he did things like he would take them back to their old hood or like things along
Exactly.
those things, and they
Mhm.
did that in Blackish as well, right? Like when they would take the father in Blackish would take him all the way back to the old neighborhood and just to show them where they came from. And so I don't know that that's an effective strategy for me, but I oftentimes want them to look at what it means to not have something and to start from scratch in order to get it, as opposed to start.
Man. But then so think about it like this. I also try to think about it like, I eventually want my daughter to grow up and be with a black man or a man of color, right? what a good man, right? Now, what happens when that good man, I mean, good guy, hits a rough patch, right? Molly is gonna be like, well, I've never seen a rough patch before, right? My dad isn't. I don't. Why? I don't want her to kind of be. Even though I don't think I'm raising her to be like that, but I also don't want her to kind of like um have never be being that she's never been in a space like that before, that she's struggling with love and maybe a really good man hitting a hard patch and her not knowing what to do with that because maybe she's never seen her dad hit a hard patch. And I'm kind of like the barometer of whatever, right? And I was talking to a friend the other day about that, like, man, like that's kind of like, a lot of people say my worst nightmare. That's not my worst nightmare, but that's a nightmare for me where it's like, no, he's a good man. Let him get it together. He's gonna get back on his feet. But I know I'm kind of rambling right now. It's only because I've recently had that conversation with a friend of mine while I was cutting his hair the other day, and we were just talking about like how we're raising daughters, and a lot of people don't think that they're raising daughters to be wives, right? That seems like, oh, you shouldn't be raising your daughter to be a wife. We in such this weird space right now when it comes to masculinity and femininity, and we just in such a weird place right now that people are afraid to talk about the duality of the masculine and feminine and how it works together and all of that stuff. But again, I'm rambling, so.
Yeah, and you may not be raising her to be a wife, but you are raising her to be a partner in this world, right?
Yeah.
Because when that comes along, she needs to have the tools that are necessary in order to be successful. So that's a whole other podcast, and we can definitely get into that. So we're gonna take a break right now, and when I come back, I want to hear what dope things you do, right, Chris? Because I think that there's a whole long list, and I'm really interested in hearing what you pick. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back with Chris Slaughter and Dope People.
I see dope people.
And we are back with Dope People. And again, I am your host, Hayden Green, Brooklyn's favorite polymath. And ladies and gentlemen, we are having a great time talking with my guest this week, and his name is Chris Slaughter. Chris, how are we doing? Are you enjoying yourself? Are we good on the podcast?
And I'm always enjoying myself talking to my brother, man. If only people can hear the conversation that we have off camera, right?
Oh man, listen, those have been some really doozies, man. I really enjoyed talking with you. Chris, and I'm wearing my Clarence t-shirt today just in your honor.
Donation. That's the first. As soon as I saw that shirt, that's the first words that came out of my mouth was donation.
Well, I'm glad you recognize it. But Chris, I want to hear from you what are you doing that's dope? And it could be something that you did one time, like I once taught Alicia Keys how to beatbox, or it could be something that you do on a regular basis where you volunteer at the ASPCA every weekend. What dope things are you doing?
So this is a really difficult question for me in some weird way. So I'm gonna answer it like this. The dopest thing that I've ever done was learn how to cut hair. Cutting hair is the dopest thing that I've ever done, right? Now, sure, I'm a teacher. I'm a sped teacher. I work with kids with special needs. I'm a good dad. I like to try to feed the homeless and go into prisons and all of these different things, right? But I realized that being a barber is probably the dopest thing that I do, is because it's the foundation to every single thing that I do, right? Being a barber allowed me to develop skills that I've taken to the classroom with me, that I've used with my daughter, because you can be cutting a killer's hair 1 hour and a doctor's hair the next hour. And what it taught me was how to shift from one type of conversation to another type of conversation. and no matter what I'm doing, I'm fading or lining, right? Which are barber terms, right? So like even in my classroom when I'm trying to teach where one kid has autism and another kid has ADHD, right? I look at that as like, it's almost like when you're cutting someone's hair, right? Cutting someone's hair, every now and then, some people have different grains in different places, right? And or they might have like a lighter spot there, and right, and you're cutting that one head. So that head is kind of like a metaphor for a class, right? When I get to a certain part of the head, I got to put a certain guard on, or I got to take the guard off, and I got to go with the grain here and against the grain there. And I have to do all of this like on one person's head, right? So that person's head is essentially like my classroom, and that classroom is doing different things, right? But if I go against the grain on the part where I'm supposed to go with the grain for, then there's a bald spot, right? That bald spot is symbolic to like a lesson plan just not going well, which has happened plenty of times. I've taught a lesson and it's like I still don't get it. And then I got to go home, or my car ride home, I'm like, how do I teach this argumentative essay in a way where a kid that's autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, I got they all have to get it, right? They all have to get it. Being a barber also helped me, like even with talking to my daughter, right? Because of course I cut kids and adults, and I have to be able to fade in and out of feelings. Sometimes I got to put this feeling to the side, and I gotta. It's being a barber. The metaphor in being a barber literally spills into every single part of my life. There's no part of my life that even as a poet, I've written a lot of poems where after I finished cutting someone's hair, I had to like take a break to go and write a poem because that person sparked something, or that person told me a story, and I can't cut any. I got to get to it. I got to at least write 2 or 3 stanzas right quick. And when I decided to stop cutting hair and go to college, it was an odd thing because back to barbering, right? Knowing how to fade and blend from light to dark, dark to light. And when I went to college, it's like I was like the hood kid in college. But then when I came back to the hood, I was like the person who left them to go to college, right? And then when I went and did my master's in poetry, that was another thing. It was like, how do I fade this? How do I line this? How do I get the line properly, right? Because here I am in a class where there was only like maybe 2 people of color in that class, and now it's a higher level of education, and it's again bringing it back to the dopest thing I've ever done was a barber. I'm like, okay, I've talked to these people before. I've done this before. I've done this, right?
Yeah.
And a quick story where my mentor invited me over. This when I was in undergrad, invited me over for dinner at his home. I'm sitting there with his daughter and his daughters, his wife, and whatever. And then 30 minutes later, I'm at my friend's house, and I'm not gonna say it, but there's like naked women running around, and I'm like, okay, all right.
One end of the spectrum to the other.
Like it was wild. And I remember that day going, yo, bro, like you just went from having these really high level conversations at a dinner table to like loud rap music playing and naked women running around, and your friend, yo, listen to this verse. Like it was I was like, how do you even do that? I'm a barber, right? I'm a barber, right? So I think, yeah. So to answer your question, I think being a barber is probably the dopest thing that I've ever done in my life, and it's shaped my life in so many ways. Like growing up, my mom didn't have money, and it was either like learn how to do something or hit the streets. And I just, my boy Salik and my boy Tyrone, I got to show them love. I haven't seen Salik in years, but he let me cut his hair when we were like 13 years old. And from there I just got the bug, and being a barber, I think that's the dopest thing that I've ever done. I hope I answered the question.
No, you did. And listen, you answer the question the only way Chris Slaughter can answer the question. That is absolutely dope. I really appreciate that. And what I really and I wore this shirt for you because like you've done so many different
Because I'm
things.
sexual chocolate. I know, bro. It's a little inappropriate to even you shouldn't even bring that here, bro. Like,
but you've done so many different things and gone to so many different other places. But at the essence of who you are, you've always come back to being a barber. Like you still cut your students here. You cut people's here in the neighborhood. If people call you up and it's like, I need a cut, you're there for them. Little known fact, you know this, you cut my hair the day of my wedding.
I did?
Yeah, the day of my wedding, I came to you, you gave me my cut for my wedding. You
I
cut my
did.
hair. Yeah, you cut my hair for my wedding.
I forgot, I forgot all about that. That's wild. You got a
Yep.
baldy, right?
Yep. Still had a baldy, but I didn't want to cut it myself, and I didn't have tools at the time.
Man.
And I was like, the only person that I trust to get it completely right for my wedding is Chris Slaughter. I came to you on the morning of my wedding to get my hair cut.
Speaking of your wedding, I remember when you met your wife.
You remember that?
Bro, I remember you. We was doing the poetry shows at I can't think of the name of that spot on Atlantic. Ovations. And you came in looking like Morpheus with the leather mittens, leather trench, leather hat. In my mind, that's the day it happened. I know that's probably not when it happened, but the day you had the trench, the leather, everything, and she was like, "Whoa!" But yeah, that's kind of in my mind. That's how it happened.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, Slaughter, we end the show with a really interesting moment in history, and I'm wearing the shirt, so I gotta go back to one of the most famous movies in Black culture. 1988 debuts the Coming to America movie starring Eddie Murphy as Prince Hakeem. Hakeem, I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Eddie Murphy. This is Eddie Murphy as Clarence, right?
Right.
Eddie Murphy plays how many characters in Coming to America?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's either 4 or 5.
It's 4. It's 4 characters. He plays Prince. He plays the Prince. He plays Randy Watson. He plays Clarence, the barber. And he also plays Saul.
The white guy in the white guy, yep. The old white guy, yep.
In the barbershop. Aha. Aha.
Yep.
One of the and Coming to America is one of the more quotable movies of all time. Not just in the community. So I think that's a dope moment in history of one man playing 4 different characters and 4 very, very different characters. Slaughter, if people are looking for you, where can they find you?
You can find me. I'm really not on Instagram too much. Chris Slaughter on Facebook. If anyone needs to contact me, write slaughter@gmail.com, WRITE slaughter@gmail.com. Yeah, find me. I do tutoring, I do all kinds of stuff. You need me to put a roof on your home, I can do that too. I actually wish I could do that. I can't. Don't call me about no roof.
Well, we'll get that up in the show notes, and I want to thank you so much for being part of today's podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please like and save and subscribe and do all of those things. Share this with other people. Make sure they hear all the work that Slaughter is doing out there. Also, if you have somebody who you think is perfect for the podcast, please get in contact with me through the podcast, and we will get them on and interview them as well. Again, thank you, Chris, and thank you for coming out and for. And then we will see you all next week with another dope person. But until then, go forth and be dope. See y'all later.